Thank you, Nilesh, for inviting me to talk about sustainable buildings today. I've been following FMJPI's efforts over the last 5-6 years, and I think you've done a fantastic job getting all the facility management professionals together, and it's a good thing to be in front of you. I've done some talks, but this is the first time I'm doing a Facebook live event for the group. So climate risk is definitely real. Those of you who've been following the news would have seen that the Inter-Government Panel, this was a few months back, had given a stark warning that climate change across the world is worsening, and risks which were expected in the next 30 years could happen in the next 10 years thanks to climate risk. We all know, and this is a widely publicized figure, that 39% of global carbon emissions is generated by the built environment. That's the real estate industry. All of us end up generating 39% of the global carbon emissions. And 28% of global carbon emission is related to energy from building. So just the energy aspect alone, which is energy used for cooling in Western countries, energy used for heating and lighting, this alone contributes to 28% of the global carbon emissions. Rising temperature, higher rainfalls, higher sea levels. We have seen across the world how these are causing fires, floods, droughts, cyclones. We have seen how Mumbai occasionally has those rains. Chennai every year, November, December, something or the other keeps happening in terms of floods. Extreme heat. We all know that the temperatures across the world is rising, which means extreme heat will end up increasing your energy consumption, because you're going to be using more air conditioning, which means you're going to end up spending more money, so extra costs. We all have been hearing about rising sea levels, which will obviously lead to flooding. We know that a lot of cities, including Indian major cities, look at Mumbai, look at Chennai, are coastline cities, and that's something which again one needs to be worried about. Solutions, I'll keep talking about various solutions during the course of today's talk. But urban forests is something which we can definitely start focusing on, at least not cutting the green areas which are already there in our cities. Obviously have more green spaces, urban green spaces, increase that to bring down the urban heat island effect. Many of you would have heard about the urban green heat island effect, where parts of cities, because of the activity of people and automobiles and buildings and carbon emissions and everything, there are heat zones, heat islands which are created in these zones, which have to be reduced. Small things which one can do: green roofs, green surfaces which are reflective, good ventilation, if possible, to reduce temperatures. All that definitely can make a small impact. There are multiple regulations which are coming. I will mention some of them. May sound like a little bit jargon, but lots to learn from some of these regulations, some of these bodies, and I'm sure after this session is over, many of you, I'd like to encourage you to just catch up on some reading. It's a very vast topic, so it's worth spending some time, given that most of you who have logged in today are facility management professionals. Today, if I look at what's the most talked about aspect in the facility management business, it's definitely sustainability. Second is technology, but I think sustainability is even more than technology. Please do more research on aspects like TCFD, which is Task Force for Climate-Related Financial Measurements, TCFD. India very soon, the top 1,000 listed companies will have to disclose ESG metrics. That's definitely going to happen. Globally, one of the biggest investors in real estate are pension funds. So today, you look at India, companies like pension funds like Canadian Pension Plan, Ivanhoe, Cambridge, all these, the main money they get is from pension funds. So even look at the large investors like Blackstone and Brookfield. Their biggest, what we call limited partner, which is basically people who give them money to manage. They are again pension funds. So pension funds across the world are putting in pressures on building owners, on building developers to adapt to various ESG proposals. Many governments have been setting ambitious net zero goals. India's 2070, which is a little long time away, but given how gases emissions, CO2 emissions are happening, I think there'll be a lot of initiatives coming up in the next 10 years. Another trend we've been seeing across the world is insurance premium. It's been going up, especially for buildings around coastlines. So that's a trend for cities which have buildings around the coastline. So that's a trend one needs to look at. Again, there seems to be a little bit worry around that aspects. Investments are long term typically of these pension funds. Pension funds typically take a 10, 15, 20-year view. And because these are 10, 15, 20-year views, the impact of this sustainability and green would only be felt towards the end of the fund life or towards the end of the investment life, and which also means that the impact which is today, and let's say it's a 10-year money, 10 years down the line, the impact is going to be multi-float. So that's something one needs to definitely look at. Significant emission is there when you construct new buildings. So globally, there is a drive to to stay in retrofitted buildings, to do more refurbishment. That is definitely better than demolishing and then developing. One needs to also look at embodied carbon. I'll talk a little more about that slightly later. That's definitely something which is there. Just to build I was reading a research which said that just to build a 2-bedroom apartment, you end up there's a residence where we all stay, like 2 or 3 bedroom apartments, requires 80 tons of carbon is emitted. When you're building a new house, a new 2-bedroom apartment, while when you're refurbishing it, it's only 8 tons which is there. So 95% of the building stock, 95% plus of the building stock in India is not green, and a lot of developers today are proactively looking at aspects like IGBC. While a lot of occupiers today, we see them looking at LEED ratings. Green financing is catching up. I'll talk a little more about that, where loan incentives. Again, global financial organizations are giving loan incentives for retrofitting and for green building. So you're able to raise capital at a lower cost. Some of the key terms which one should keep in mind is aspects like whole life carbon. So whole life carbon basically is the carbon you emit during operations, and the embodied carbon. I know I'm talking some jargons, but I'll try and simplify things. So what is operational carbon? Is basically emissions which are produced while running a building. So when you run a building, the emissions is called operation carbon, and embodied carbon is basically emissions produced at the time of construction, to construct, to transport, and to execute and to assemble. When you do all this of materials for a building, That's what it's called, embodied carbon. So you're not just contributing when you're operating a building, you're also contributing because all the steel and cement and everything which comes, that is also producing embodied carbon, because all those materials coming to a building, all that, by the time it reaches it, there is also carbon emissions happening there. The multiple scopes one can look at. One needs to look at what is the direct emission from your owned and controlled spaces, the spaces which you control. What is the emission coming out of that? Indirect emissions is something one needs to track from purchased energy. What kind of energy are you purchasing, and how is that impacting? Third is indirect emissions from the entire value chain. Typically, this is the highest component which is there. Owners of buildings. I'm sure there are a lot of facility management professionals today on this video webinar who are from the owner side, and I think the most important aspect for them is identifying methods for reducing embodied emissions for new development as well as for major refurbishment of buildings. That's something which is very important for occupiers. Again, when you're looking at embodied carbon, you need to look at for what is happening during major refurbishments, minor fit outs, what is your emissions there, and track that. And investors obviously need to engage with building owners to ensure that various and to educate building owners that measures would be taken to to reduce embodied carbon. Let's also look at a concept called sustainable leases. A lot of corporations today are looking at various criteria around how energy, water, waste, how to incorporate that in leases, because it's one thing for you to have sustainable goals, but your landlords or buildings, investors you're talking to, it's very important, owners who are talking to, they also need to have those goals. So the sustainable leases are coming. Corporates are making sustainability everywhere. Every company has today a sustainable goal. It's part of the corporate identity, and reporting performance around that is becoming important day by day. Both base building and the fit out and the way the space is used to make a space customizable become very important. So I would encourage the facility management professionals here to look at green leasing building guides. Again, the various clauses one can incorporate in contracts include what are the rating, what are the green building ratings which one have, what is how are central services provided, separate how do you create separate meters for tenants, for tenants lighting, for tenants power, for tenants central services, so that you can track these. Having a building management committee where all the occupiers and the building owners come together to discuss what better can be done to improve energy efficiency. Energy management, coming together to prepare an energy management plan for the building. Again, getting both the landlords and the tenants together to discuss how can energy management for building and tenancy be improved, and also that forum can be used for any disputes or remedies, and that should also be incorporated. So these are some of the clauses one can put, whether having a energy management plan, whether having a building management committee, how to resolve disputes, having separate meters to track different aspects of power, and rating for the buildings in terms of simple aspects to be kept in mind: hours of operation, workspace ratio, tenancy, the power load which tenants have. All these are small things, but it plays an important role while taking decisions. So what is the corporate occupier today looking at? Very simple terms, most corporate occupiers today are looking for energy efficient lighting, energy efficient electrical systems. That's very common. That's become a very common aspect, where things can be flexible and zoned in terms of air conditioning. That's very important, where climate can be controlled, not just one climate for the entire piece. That's becoming important, very important. And ability to measure and control resources. How do you measure water? How do you measure power? How do you control power? How do you control water? That's important. That becomes very important. Sensible building design in terms of how can you use solar gains when the sunlight is there. How do you design that? Natural light. How do you bring that in to reduce power costs? And enhanced environment, to create an enhanced environment to work in, and which overall occupiers every time are looking for managing their costs. How do you minimize your occupancy costs, and how does all this bring? We have definitely seen that electricity, which is the biggest operating cost in a building. HVAC again forms most of that, nearly 50% of their electricity usage. Electricity itself is around 35 to 40% of the operating cost. So one needs to be definitely looking at aspects around it. We've seen that occupancy rate, which means the opposite of vacancy rates. Vacancy rates are lower in lead buildings. Occupancy rates are higher. Investors today are willing to pay more. I'll cover a little bit more about that, on how much investors will be willing to pay for what the investors globally call. More than 60% of the investors today globally, large global investors, have their own ESG plan, have their own ESG missions and statements. That 60% number is going to become 80% in the next 1 to 2 years. So what they call is socially responsible investing. That's again a trend which is definitely catching up. Non-green buildings going forward could be considered functionally obsolete, and the takers for that are going to be minimal. There's a big opportunity also for non-green buildings to upgrade their buildings. So what are corporates doing? So putting green leases, that leasing which I spoke about, looking at whenever you appoint a consultant or vendor, looking at their ESG standards, using ESG and green standards while choosing your developers or landlord evaluation, and also while selecting materials and equipment. Corporates are looking at sustainability features. So these are high level aspects. Let me go to a little nitty-gritties in terms of what we are seeing from a corporate as well as a landlord point of view. Energy emissions at the building level become very important. So the challenge of translating net zero goals to practical and tangible initiatives at the asset level becomes important. It's not easy. You may have a big sustainability goal as a company. Your CEO would have said that, okay, by 2030 or 2040 or 2050, you are going to be net zero. Now, how do you translate that zero goals into practical and tangible initiatives at a building level or your floor level, wherever you're located? I think the first step is starting with an energy audit to determine the usage and primary areas. Which are the areas which you need to focus for reduction will come from that energy audit. You should also look at how you can remove unnecessary energy consumption, whether it's HVAC, lighting. How do you do that? That's another small step which you can take, but which will have a lot of impact. Upgrading lighting to more efficient alternatives. That's again important. How do you purchase green energy? Talking to your landlords, what are the options to purchase green energy? That's a question which you need to be asking before every leasing decision. By 2023, like I said, nearly 80% of the investors, global real estate investors, will incorporate ESG into their global investing strategy. In the ESG strategy, global investors will focus most on assets which are environmentally aligned, which means green assets. You need to look at how you're going to be tracking energy, how you're going to be tracking water, and how you're going to be tracking waste. Green certifications become very important. I know it's basic, but green LEED certified buildings globally we have seen receive more rental than non-LEED certified buildings. There have been studies which have done which have spoken about 6%, 10%, 15% more rentals. LEED certified assets also outperform during recession and recession recovery periods, which means the occupancy levels are better during. We are in a recession recovery period now, especially in commercial real estate, when things went down last year from 49 million square feet of absorption in 19 to around 25 million square feet of absorption, and now it's the recovery period, and we've seen across the world that LEED certified assets are outperforming non-LEED certified assets. When I mean LEED, it's green buildings. Again, LEED certified assets receive, this is interesting research which is done, that LEED certified, while selling a building, LEED certified buildings get 21% higher sale price than non-LEED certified buildings. So not only are you getting higher rental, maybe around 11% higher rental when you are operating the building, but also while selling, compared to other buildings, you get 21% higher. The global statistics around green buildings. LEED is something one you can definitely look at. There's something called BREEAM, BREEAM. That's something which again one can look at. Energy Star certifications are also gaining prominence, especially in Europe. So certification is a good first step and towards filling your sustainability goals. So LEED certified buildings, again, because of lower vacancy and lower vacancy compared to non-LEED certified buildings, we believe this will only increase the vacancy in non-LEED buildings. We are definitely seeing in Indian commercial real estate where tenants are moving for quality, moving to better quality buildings, and the buildings typically they move out of are older buildings which are not green or LEED certified. So monitoring and measuring your ESG becomes very important, especially in a remote working environment where energy usage to specific purposes of businesses being offshored from are being last year a lot of companies celebrated that my ESG goals were met. I was looking at reduced emissions, but what is happening was reduced emissions in office buildings became more emissions from home. I'm sure all of you will remember that between Feb last year, if you compare your electricity bills at home between Feb and April last year, you would have seen electricity bills go from 40, 50, 60, 70% higher electricity bills because everybody was sitting at home, people working out of home, children going to school from home, doing so, air conditioning running, lights running, fans running. So what was typically happening was companies were meeting their goals last year, but that is because people were sitting at home. So there was one multinational company which actually did this research, this American research, and they realized if you totaled the extra bit of energy consumption happening from home, this is actually 121% of the impact. So it is much more, which basically highlights also the aspect that working from office is definitely more efficient and environment friendly. Not too many of us are educated enough of how many of us have done space audits, energy audits at home. We keep the AC on. Many people stay in centralized air conditioning buildings. Many people just switch on the AC, the light, the fans, so on. We don't track energy usage. All we know is, okay, let's switch off the lights. In residential buildings especially, energy consumption in common areas also went up. due to not just the residents inside, but also common areas went up because more people were at home. So energy usage inside homes, like I said, went up nearly 20% during that time. And after that, people started realizing that when energy started going up, some of the buildings which we were managing, we made sure that there was installation of better building management and energy efficiency systems, which later on brought down these energy costs. So, so the companies which reported decline in energy consumption during COVID, obviously they're not calculating the energy consumption happening at happening at home due to work from home. So for IT, back office, global processing centers having 10 to 20% utilization in the pandemic, energy costs have definitely gone down. I've heard numbers like 30, 50, 60 from different clients. For sectors like banking and professional services, again, where people have started going back to work in a much more manner than like more re-entry, energy consumption levels today, when you look at it, are down only by 10-15% compared to 2019 levels. So the green building movement has to improve in India. Not too many green building projects in the country. There are various people now again becoming members, nearly 2,000 plus members of IGBC member organizations, 2,000 plus new projects which have been certified by green buildings, and there are different chapters today coming up, different rating systems coming up. So all that are things which needs to be looked at. So occupiers, from an occupier point of view, a tenant point of view, a corporate point of view, are increasingly moving away from properties where environmental green performance is lower. Like I said, those buildings will see higher vacancies. World Building Council's green net zero carbon building commitment. That's a very interesting document. Please check that when you have time. That calls for buildings to have net zero carbon emissions by 2050, and this net zero carbon building commitment is definitely catching more momentum globally. The UN's initiative called Race to Zero. Again, please catch up on some reading around that, which challenges companies to half emission, not full, but half emission by 2030. Also, that's also gaining momentum. Globally, investors today are formally including carbon neutrality in their investment strategies. I was reading that large global investors like PGIM, Brookfield, AXA, Allianz, these are large global real estate investors. All of them have committed to net zero carbon emission by 2050. Green leases, like I said, are definitely gaining momentum. So metrics around how do you I'll speak a little more about what the metric should be around green leases. So electricity per occupant, how much kilowatt hours per employee, what is the water used by area, what is a ratio of volume of waste disposed to landfill as a volume of total waste produced. Tracking these become important. Green leases are relatively quite easy for office tenants, while we have seen that for retail tenants, it becomes retail occupiers it becomes difficult, given that many retailers use high energy intensive lighting for product displays. You look at malls, you look at storefronts, there's a lot of light coming in. High efficient energy efficient air conditioning is catching up. VAV, variable air volume systems, again catching up very fast. In USA, there was a recent research done which said that green office buildings were getting 6% more rentals than this thing. So uh, there are three different surveys at 6, 11, and around 14%. So, lead buildings again commanding higher rentals and capital values. Energy Star certified buildings today. That's an interesting group of people. You should try and read up about the Energy Star rating certifications. Those buildings today consume 35% less energy. Two buildings which I was reading about was one was the Bloomberg London building and the Keppel Bay Tower in Bloomberg building in London and the Keppel Bay Tower in Singapore. Again, worth reading about what they have done. So use of green construction material is slowly catching up, especially timber. There are height restrictions today in terms of how many floors you can go with timber related construction. But definitely there's enough research that if one is doing timber related buildings, there is a lot of, if you can include timber in your building, there is a lot of elimination of emissions. So regulatory requirements need to be a little more loosened if one needs to be building more high-rise timber-rated buildings. Regulatory requirements are only going to be tightened. Government regulations would be a lot more tightened around green buildings going forward. Global insurance premiums, I spoke about it, how global insurance premiums are increasing due to physical damage from natural disasters. As natural disasters increase, your insurance costs go up for building insurance, which means your landlord will obviously incorporate it. It's a landlord scope if you're in a tenanted building, and then he'll charge you more for that, which means your rental outflow goes up. You should look at how you can calculate your carbon footprint for your entire portfolio, from the smallest of office to your largest of offices. Target and also fix a target year where you can achieve the net zero carbon, and also have two target years. One is for achieving full net zero, and the other is for achieving half year by reducing it to 50%. So which year will you achieve 50% net zero, and which year will you achieve full net zero? That's something one needs to look at. Try and look at how you can maximize supply of on-site renewable energy in your offices or plants or malls or wherever you work. Ensure 100% of off-site renewable energy is procured from renewable energy sources. Please try and do that. Energy efficiency using renewable energy on and off-site and on embodied carbon and carbon offsetting becomes important. Read up about aspects like PAS 2060 certification for carbon neutrality. That's a new framework which has come up, PAS 2060. World GBC, Green Building Council, is bringing up a new legislation, not legislation, new guidance around embodied carbon footprints. So that's something again worth reading. Science-Based Targets Initiative, SBTI, Science-Based Target Initiative. Try and see if you can get those, read up about those frameworks. Carbon Risk Level Monitor, that's something again one needs to target. International Living Futures Institute, that's again an organization doing some good research around net zero certification. And Chartered Institution of Building Services Engineers. So all these organizations have different parameters. So I've taken 34 minutes. I'm sure there was some basic level understanding with the audience got about green and sustainable buildings. And I work for Colliers India. I have a India role and a Asia role. Any audience here, please feel free to reach out to me at ramesh.nair at colliers.com. I'll repeat, ramesh.nair at colliers.com. We provide three services like other real estate professional services firms. We provide brokerage services around office leasing, industrial leasing. We provide project management services for occupiers. Project management business, we are the largest in the country. And we also offer facility management services for corporate occupiers and commercial owners and developers. So that's our core business meant for occupier. We also have departments like capital markets, which focus on equity and debt capital markets. So that's a little bit about the firm I work for. Look forward to staying connected, and thank you for your active interest in participating in today's event. Thank you.